right, everybody, welcome back to another Street Hockey Life podcast. My guest today is someone that I've known of. I don't want to say personally, but I've heard his name many times. He's a powerhouse in the ball hockey community. Many of you know his name. Jason Kelly is on today talking about cool hockey and some of the events. This past weekend, I got a chance to go down to the North American Championship with my wife who was playing, and I had a great experience. But I'm so happy to have Jason on. Actually a year ago we tried to do this in person. And we tried to do it in person down in Pennsylvania, but I broke a microphone. So anyway, Jason, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Our pleasure. So, um, like I said, how you feeling after a long weekend of hockey?
They're always tough, after tournament weekends. Luckily, I'm self-employed, between the Milwaukee events and 2 and 10. Usually take Mondays off. This Monday started spring break with the family. So we drove down to the beach and we're going to kind of take our few days down here before we go back home and get ready for the next weekend of North Americans. But a little tired, a little ragged, but it's been the same for the last, I don't know, 15 years. So I'm kind of used to this experience, a couple days after.
That's awesome. You need the rest. It's quite an operation you guys run down there. I want to talk a little bit more about that in a few, but great job. I had a great time this weekend. So kind of wanted to get your story a little bit, how you got involved in all this. First thing is, how did you actually get into the game of ball hockey? Just tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Okay, well, I was 22 years old. Had never played an organized game of hockey before in my life. Just playing on the street as a kid and whatnot with some friends. But sitting on a construction site, I was a union electrician, and we were building a hotel in Philadelphia. And our union ice hockey team just won a big game in the playoffs the night before. So we're all sitting around at lunchtime talking about that. And a couple of the guys suggested, we should get a men's league team together. And somebody asked me if I wanted to play, and I said I would love to, but I can't skate to save my life. And somebody else in the trip that we have a lunch mentioned that we can go play this thing called deck hockey. And I was like, what the hell is that? Right? Never heard of it. Quick explanation. So I got, I could jog. I might not be able to run, but I'm in. Like, let's go try it. We put a team together with an electrician called the Sparks, and we went up to this place locally in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Put our team in, and I remember the first game. As we're getting dressed, it starts to rain. Right, so we're all starting to get undressed. Right, we're not going to play hockey in the rain. That's just dumb. And the owner or the manager of the facility came out and said, guys, we don't cancel games in the rain. Like, you're gonna have to play. The team we played, was a veteran team. They knew what they were doing, putting on their galoshes, getting out their hairspray, whatever it was. And we got demolished, like 12-1. Couldn't stand up. But I remember that night, that game, like it started the hook, it started the addiction, and starting to play there. They quickly built a building to go indoors right after that season. So we started playing indoors there. I would say within a year, I was starting to go up there every night after work. Who needs a sub, want to play? Asked to help out with the youth roller hockey league. Asked the ref really quick. And then within not even 2 years, a bunch of the guys that I got to work with there asked me about running, a single day jamboree type tournament. Kind of did that, and I don't want to say that hook was fully in for that addiction to ball hockey, but it was there, it was set. I was spending 4 nights a week at the rink, playing as much as possible, working, whatever. And that kind of started my progression, into getting into ball hockey. The addiction really came when I was first asked to help out at cool hockey events before I was involved with it. But the final hook for me was like my first time going international and walking into a men's gold medal game with 9,000 people in the stadium, in a full-size ice hockey stadium. I remember texting my wife from Europe, knowing she wasn't going to get the phone service, but texting it just so that it was still there. That I'm never going to not do this again. It was literally the text I sent her, and it's been like that ever since. All from just a couple guys sitting in the trailer wanting to go play a men's league game. It changed my life, like, legitimately.
That's awesome. When we were a couple years ago, when the Bruins went on their cup run in 2011, I mean, they've been on a few other runs, but there was a thing that they put out was the Big Bad Bruins was about the 70s, this, the Bobby Orr era. And one of the things that was on that documentary, if you will, was there was so few rinks at ice rinks now. And when Bobby Orr kind of just changed the culture up here in New England about every kid wanted to be Bobby Orr, right? And in that documentary, though, they talk about how he inspired rinks to be built, ice rinks in Massachusetts, but kids were literally taken to the streets to play street hockey. Do you feel like that's what
Yeah.
inspired you too? I mean, that sounds like where that some of that starts from, where the Flyers are doing well. Do you feel like when the Flyers are, Stanley Cup contenders, more kids are in the game, or I know it's does that make sense, that question?
Yeah, I definitely feel that was a big start of ball hockey for us back in our area. Again, I didn't play organized, till I was an adult, but I know that, when the Flyers, made their cup runs back when I was really little, and even into the mid '80s when I really watched watching the Flyers in the Edmonton, in the Cup Finals with Hextall. He wins the Vezina as the losing team, and that was big, right? That's when me and my friends started playing in the street, right? Like, everybody wanted to be, one of the Flyers, right? Like, for me growing up a little bit, like I always wanted to be Eric Lindros, right? Yeah, that was my favorite player. It's the only jersey I'll wear to this day. Every time they get a new jersey, I get one with his name and number on. So that was like kind of us in the street. Again, where I grew up, we just didn't know that this outdoor league that had 120 ball hockey teams was around, right? It was like 4 or 5 towns away from us. We just didn't know about it. So we played in the street growing up, and that was it. Everybody, whoever had to be goalie that day was Ron Hextall. Whoever was playing out was, whatever their favorite Flyers were. And when the Flyers are doing well, I've experienced kind of growing up through ball hockey. Like when the Flyers are doing well, right, you see more participation, out here in the leagues. It helps. It definitely helps the street hockey people grow their leagues, because you get a big buzz in the city, in the area, the people that want to play.
Absolutely. What was the event that you went to where there was the 9,000? What event was that?
That was like my first time at the World Ball Hockey Championships in 2008. My old partner from Milwaukee, JJ DeVinny, was the head coach of the women's national team, and he asked me to be an assistant coach. So I didn't have a ton of coaching experience, but at that time I was running the women's tournaments, and I kind of knew the girls, and so I kind of got involved. And remember going to Worlds, like just the experience of getting on a plane and flying to Europe for ball hockey was kind of cool. But the girls were at an offsite rink. There was the main ice hockey rink and then an offsite rink, and the girls were playing offsite all week. And when we went over for our first practice for our bronze medal game in the big rink, walking in that stadium was just kind of awe inspiring. It was a 10,000 seat ice hockey stadium, right?
Awesome.
So being there for that was cool, and being there for the girls game was great. Like it was a lot of fans, more than we had ever experienced here in the States, right? But I would say there was maybe 800 to 1,000 people watching the women's game. When we came back for the men's, it was the USA versus India. There was probably 4,000 people in the stadium. When we came back for the gold medal game, it was the host Czechs versus Team India. I believe, if I remember correctly, I want to say it was an 8,500 seat stadium, and they announced the attendance at like 9,400. Right? I mean, standing room only. It was packed. It was like being at an NHL game, and that hook kept getting set deeper and deeper into me that whole trip. But that for me was like to see that like this is legit. Right, this isn't just something that we play outside and or in these smaller indoor rinks. Like this is a legitimate thing. Found out while I was there about professional leagues in Switzerland, that players like Andrew Hildreth from Leominster had gone over and was paid to play ball hockey. Right, like professional leagues that had just started in Canada that year. Bobby Hauser played in maybe 2 years after that experience. Like to see all that kind of start, like really kind of lent the legitimacy to a world that everybody looked at as something you played in your driveway.
Absolutely. When we were doing research for the rink that we built in Gloucester, that's when we found out about this world, the ISBHF and USA Ball Hockey, all of this. USA Ball Hockey was just starting around that 2019, and that's really when we started doing a lot of our, actual planning for our rinks. So I was amazed by the level of intensity, and I went through sort of this. I want to say internal, like, okay, I grew up playing street hockey in my grandparents' driveways or in my parents' yard. You know what I mean? Like that was to me. And the first time I ever laid eyes on Leominster deck hockey, I've told the story multiple times. So it was going to a high school hockey game that I was playing in, and our bus went right by there, and I'm like, oh, those are real street hockey rinks. I never knew anything about this world until we started researching more. Um, how we were going to build our rink, what it was going to look like, the dimensions, everything. And I've just been blown away by the community itself, how passionate people are. And like you said, that hook, that's really, it kind of gets into you. It becomes part of your life. So when did Cool Hockey start, and sort of why did you start that organization or that idea?
So Cool Hockey Events was actually started by a gentleman named Jamie Cook. He was local down here out of Philadelphia. And he grew up playing at the Family Fun Spot, the rink that we all started at. And the tournament circuit was dominated by Leominster and Long Island. They were the two big tournament directors at the time. And Jamie just kind of wanted to start something a little bit different. He wanted to start something that was going to eventually get into the lower level ball hockey players, instead of, it was just men's A tournaments back then, right? You want to put a team in, you went to a tournament, you got beat 65-0, like it happened. So 20 years ago, right? This was actually our 20th year, but because of COVID, it was our 19th event. But 20 years ago, we decided to start one. The Beach Bash. He wanted it just to be a fun time, go to the beach, have a good time tournament. He had teams out of DC where he had lived at the time, and he started it. And I don't know actually how he came up with the name Cool Hockey Events. It's something that, thinking about it right now, we actually never asked the question, but he started that, right? And then so the next year he ran what would become the North Americans. It was called the Mid-Atlantic Championships, and he ran it out of the Family Fun Spot, which is a two-rink facility that we used to be at. And then quickly right after that, he approached me about coming in and helping out. So then I helped out at Cool Hockey Events. Just came, was a gopher, running around, put my teams in, helping out whatever he needed. I would say maybe 2 years after that, I was in my first facility. Like, we bought the Family Fun Spot business, a bunch of players, when it closed, and we moved it. So I was in my first facility, and he approached me about a woman's. And he said, I don't have the time or the bandwidth to do this, but I really need somebody to do it. He had just started the women's national team in 2007. So as we talked about, we ran the first holiday bash, and it was a women's event. We added in a men's novice because, I had 4 teams that played at my rink that said they would want to play. So we did that first holiday bash, and it was, I think, 4 women's teams, 4 men's teams. Because that was successful, we decided to add another one in May, which became the Spring Classic. Again, driven for women's events. We added in men's division just to kind of fill up the day. So fast forward, after about a year, I had my 2 events, the Holiday Bash and Spring Classic. Jamie had his events, the North Americans, and the Beach Bash. He had brought JJ Davini in as his partner at the time, and then quickly, had retired. His family was expanding. He was down in DC. His job was expanding. So when he retired, JJ and I talked about combining our 2 tournament companies into one. And that's kind of how I got to Cool Hockey Events. But again, when we started that, it was 4 weekends. Now we're running 9 weekends, and only 9 because it used to be 10 when we did our Beach Bash, was 2 weekends long. But we moved that to Nashville, Tennessee now, and we have 2 rinks there. But so it expanded very, very fast. Like I said, the North Americans, when it started, 10 teams, 15 teams, maybe it got to 20. And then it just kind of exploded when, with Jamie's original ideas was adding more men's divisions. We went from 1 to 2, and then we went from 2 to 3, and now I think we have rec, novice, C, D, and A. So it lets a lot of players opportunity. Even players like myself and my team, we would never compete in an A. I played in an A tournament once in North Americans and got destroyed. But it gave us an area to compete. Like whether now my guys are all over 40. A lot of my friends, they'll still try to play in the novice tournaments, right? And we go out, we play, have a good time, get beat up all by some young kids, but they have fun, right? Like they experience it. So I think that's been the biggest reason for Milwaukee events expansion over the years and to get to the size it is now is because we make sure that there's a spot for everyone. You know, there's a lot more low end hockey players than there is high end, obviously. Like, you know, and making it so that there's a fair spot, you know, for everyone to play has been like our ultimate goal. Recently at Milwaukee events, right, with because of the NBHL and all that happening and how they monitor it, we've changed how we do our events. Before it was where JJ and myself, our other partner Nick Beard, we would sit down, look at rosters, and decide if we felt that they were good enough to be where they were or what division they should be in. And that always, you know, had a potential of backfiring, right? Like we decided they were, you know, not good enough to go into the B. We put them in the C, and then they kick everybody's butt, right? Like so, we adopted this salary cap system that the NBHL, you know, had come up with, and we kind of tweaked it around a little bit for our events. And the last year's North Americans men's C, I think, was the first time we did it, and it proved that it was spot on. The 11 and the 16 seed met each other in the finals, right? Everybody was, you know, all the games were pretty much close. You know, there's definitely, you know, argument all the time about it. There's definitely flaws in it, right? People are valued too high or valued too low, whatever, but everybody's working off of that same system. And I think it's proven that it's working. This year was the first time that we instituted it for the women's B and C divisions. And the whole goal of all of that is so that somebody from Massachusetts who's never played in a tournament before, or down here at least, can put together a team based on a system and know that they're going to be somewhere close to all the other teams. You know, if they come down and they beat everybody up or get beat up, like that's a different story, right? But they're close. And, you know, we want it so that when someone comes to their first event, they're going to be on the phone on the way home trying to book their second event. You know, they want to come back. They want to experience it because that makes it easier to grow the sport and to get more teams playing. It allows people to sit down and say, okay, I only play house league on Sunday mornings with, you know, with my kids or with my friends, but I want to go to Philly or I want to go to Tiverton or I want to go, you know, down to Florida if those events come back. Like I want to try one of these. And we want to make that happen. Because for us growing up, when we first started playing, we traveled everywhere, right? Like you could ask my wife how many times I was gone, you know, when we were first together, because we would go to the Florida tournament twice a year. We would go to the Vegas tournament twice a year. We would go to every tournament we could find. Sometimes we did well. Most of the times we got beat up on, but we had a weekend away together playing this, you know, this kids game, you know, as adults, and you know, you couldn't beat it. You couldn't find a better experience.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So, I mean, I wanted to kind of piggyback off what you just said for me. And one of the things that growing up as a kid with ice hockey, my dad, my grandfather, and I, sometimes my mother usually would stay home with my siblings. They're younger than me. But when we went to I got to go to DC for a hockey tournament, go to Montreal, Toronto, go all these different places and play hockey. And what's come full circle for me now is now that Erin is playing, I play, but I don't know, Jason, I feel more comfortable now moving towards like the bench and coaching as opposed to, you know, I'm more interested in that, developing our programs, our leagues, giving other people the experience of playing the game, you know, because for me, I got to play to college and I can't describe it. It's like I get more joy out of seeing my wife go out there and play the game because she's really fallen in love with it. But my whole point to this is like we brought my three daughters down there this weekend. They stayed in a hotel, they went swimming, you know, and you drive together, you stop at these diners and have dinner or lunch or whatever. And these are things that I'll always remember, you know, and it was all because of a hockey event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's real. And that's the thing that I want you to know is like when you're tired and fatigued, guys like me who aren't even playing in your tournament, who are just going there as a spectator. And I was fortunate to play in it a couple years ago, but you know, you've given us memories and like even going to Nashville, we went there in February to Ashley Mouzon's tournament, you know, and I'm going to take away a lot of memories with my daughters and of course Erin that, you know, so that relationship piece is a huge part of it as well. I mean, I can't imagine how many relationships you have from this tournament setting. And what does that mean for you?
Well, ball hockey is kind of everything to me. You know, before ball hockey, I was a construction worker, right? I was on a different path in life that probably wasn't the best path. And when I started playing ball hockey, the people that I met, you know, literally changed my life. Like I stopped that bad path that I was on, and I started really only hanging around with ball hockey people. I met my wife not through ball hockey, but I met her, and if I was in the life I was in before ball hockey, I don't think that we would have, probably dated. But the group of people that I was with and hanging around with was there, and for me, it changed. Like when I bought the facility that we were playing at, we actually bought the floor, the boards, and the glass, and we took it all down, loaded it up on a truck. There was 5 players. We were literally sitting around during the last set of playoffs before the building closed, and the owner happened to walk by, and jokingly somebody asked him how much to buy it, and I forget the number he gave us. But the next night we came back for our game, and all 6 guys that were in that conversation, they all brought checkbooks and credit cards without talking to each other, just on a whim, right? And we literally we like I remember, like, I wrote a check, right? Somebody else put $5 to $8, $10,000, whatever it was, on their credit card, right? Like, we bought it. We go home that night, and I remember my wife's asking how our playoff game was. I'm like, we won, season's over, place is closing, and no, by the way, we bought a hockey rink, right? And she just kind of looked at me and thought I was joking. I'm like, no, like, we bought it. So we go up there a couple weeks later. We take everything down. We load it up, and the one guy was a concrete contractor. He had a big tractor trailer there. We load it all up. We're sitting in the parking lot having beers, and like, what the hell are we gonna do? We had no idea. Like, everybody that was involved were, it was a bus driver, a plumber, a concrete guy, an electrician. A guy worked for Major League Baseball, like he did like mixing. Like, nobody was a businessman. Nobody was, had run, a sports business or anything. Like, it was just kind of players that didn't want to stop. So as we got open in our new facility, like, it slowly changed. I was still working as an electrician. I did 4 years where, during the day as an electrician, during the night as a hockey guy. And, I was considering leaving the union and trying to pursue hockey full time. And for me, the decision was easily made. I was in a major accident on the job, and that was kind of like an easy, transition to kind of get out. I think I did about another year. And my wife was going back to work after our kids, and I was like, look, I think I want to try this, and make this a full-time gig. And by full-time, I meant hours, not money, because, it never made, anywhere near, what I could have done as a construction worker, but it was a passion for it. So fast forwarding through all that time, there's one person besides my family that's in my life, that was in my life before ball hockey. And he was the only one of my friends who came and played that first, season or two with us. Right. But it changed everything for me. I wouldn't be the person I am without this sport. The relationships I have in it, the path that my life has taken me, it's all because of what I found that first, year stepping on these rinks and playing with these people. And some of them, I'm back in our day, right? It was the Wild West. We were fighting in the parking lot after games, whatever. Like, some of the biggest, games and biggest hits and biggest fights that I had gotten in that first year, like, they're some of my closest friends now. And it's kind of something that's weird, right? Like, growing up before ball hockey, there was nobody that, you wanted to be friends with, that you were fighting with on the weekends when you're in high school. Some of those guys actually, that when I was a kid, the group from the next town over that we used to fight every weekend, like, some of those guys, they showed up at the rink one time and were playing, and we all wind up combining teams. Like, and I formed a relationship with these guys that, previously, had, maced me or pulled out a knife in a fight or whatever it was. We formed these relationships, and we played together on travel teams for years after that. We play the over 40 league together now. We see each other, right? Like, so it really shows kind of what this sport does. I'm sure everybody that has their own sport has these same kind of ideas and whatnot, but it changed everything. It literally changed my whole path in life, for me.
That's awesome. It's definitely taken my life to an area I never ever thought I would go. I mean, I was 20 years old when Young Legends started, and it was just a way for me to give back to the game. And when you're in college, you don't have any money. You don't, you know what I mean? You can't go rent ice time, right? And at that time in my life, I didn't really want to go to the rink. I was getting to the point where I was getting burnt out with the game, and I knew I had 3 years left. I wasn't going to do what Johnny Ruiz is playing, and I wasn't going to go play semi-pro somewhere. I wasn't going to do that. It was actually, at the time, was considered going to medical school. but I was like, hockey was such a huge part of my identity, and I was a little nervous, and I was afraid that it was going to be gone and out of my life. I'm like, I have to do something with it. And so when I started Young Legends, I didn't know what I was doing, Jason. I didn't have a clue, right? I had 30 kids show up to a basketball court to play. I had went out and bought these nets. Some people gave me some money to get to get some of the equipment. I had some things donated. But that day, when it started and all these kids show up, I mean, there's kids that grew up in that league that are now our board of directors. They're still great friends. We're 10 years apart, and they're great friends with me. Some of them are my, they're godparents to my kids. So, it I can really relate to your story because it's changed my life, where now my wife Erin is playing. We're going to Pennsylvania, which I think is the hub of ball hockey right now. I do. I just think right now it's just the place where you want to go to measure yourself. How good are you at times? So thanks for letting me share this as well. I know this is more about you, but I can relate to your story because it's taken me in a direction. And I've met people like you, Corey Hirsch. I talk very highly of. I mean, even our women's team. We have. It's amazing how they're great friends. So thanks for letting me rant on that. But
Well, no, but I mean that's the kind of story that makes our world turn, right? Like the people who are doing the most are 90% of the time the people that are doing it because of what you just said, right? Because of that hope that got set into them in that relationship. This isn't ice hockey, right? This isn't 10,000 seat stadiums. This isn't, $3,000 a person to play. This isn't something that a lot of people are doing for money. They're doing it because of the passion they have for it. And that's the people that, I try to lend myself to, right? I try to be involved with, I try to support the Tiverton tournaments, and what the United Women's Ball Hockey Foundation is doing. They were really our first true partners, in the tournament circuits. Like, we supported other tournaments, like Scott Duggan's tournaments. Like, we've been supporting them guys since they started. Like, I used to coach Scott in the Celtics for a while before they were the Saints.
Oh, that's cool.
And we've always supported his events. We always made sure that we told everybody we know. But like getting with the UWs, as a partnership, and making sure our events kind of mirrored each other, was there because of their passion for the game, because of their ideals to it, right? What they wanted to do to grow the women's game. The women's game for me is really where my passion and efforts go the most, because that was my start into all of it. But now, like, being able to help build everything, every division, all the way up, we got over 40, A and B coming up in 2 weeks. We got, I think, 12 teams coming, man, or maybe 10 teams, wow, for over 40. There's an over 50 tournament coming up that Chris Kaplan and the circuit are running in Buffalo. They're going to have 12 teams. 12 teams of all guys over 50. Right? I mean, it should be sponsored by Ben Gay or Tiger Bomb or something. But like, they're killing it. Like, what's going on? Like, they're providing a place for people to play, from the 18-year-olds that are going to come in and run their butts off and be super fast and skilled, all the way up to the 50-year-old guys that are going to have it all in their head. They're going to have all that skill in their mind. They might not have the speed anymore, right? But there's still a place for them to go and compete, and they compete against each other. And I think that's a big thing. When we first started in the men's league business, we had a couple different divisions, right? We had different levels, and we tried our best to always make that. But the big expansion, I think, for us in the last 5 or 6 years in that business, the hockey deck, down here in like Springfield, Pennsylvania, is we added an over 40 division. We did an over 40 draft, and we got that up to like 8 teams of 15 guys a pop. One night, all over 40. And it expanded, and it did so well that it created 2 other over 40 leagues in our area over in Jersey. Down at Bobby Jones's place at Tannsboro, and then up at Medford, they have 2 different over 40s. So now there's, I don't know, 16 teams over 40 playing in the area, right? The hockey deck started an over 50 division. That over 50 division that runs on Friday nights. It's got 6 teams, and it's super social. The guys show up. If the games are 7, 8, 9, I would say out of the 6 teams, half of them are there at 7 o'clock to watch, and then they're sitting around all night drinking beers afterwards, talking about it, right? Because it's everybody's, it's our thing, right? Like, I have a little catch line that I always say at the end of like my long post emails or Facebook posts about what's going on, and it's always like, if you don't understand what I just posted, you don't understand, like, because this is what we do. Like, that's it's just our thing. Like I said, there's going to be a football organization out there that you can find somebody that's going to have the same thoughts and ideas that I am, because it's their thing, and there's going to be a softball and there's going to be this. But I've been around a bunch of other sports. I've seen people around a bunch of other sports, and I just don't see the same type of community or people that I see in ball hockey.
I agree 100%. I mean, I was telling Erin on the ride back, we were having this conversation because she's been talking to me about, she wants to try ice hockey too. Like she wants to, learn to skate a little bit. And, she's like, I want you to get back into ice and just play a little bit. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to focus on my own game. So, but what we're talking about is, I was talking about, I'm sure there are men's ice hockey tournaments out there, but like, you know, I know in Gloucester, Mass, where I grew up, there's a 4 league tournament on Sunday nights. These guys aren't practicing though, Jason. They're not practicing together. They're not like they don't skate. I mean, ice time is expensive, right?
Yeah.
When you talk to ball hockey teams, like my assumption is the gods, they practice together. I mean, it's such an interesting. It like there was Spit and Chicklets posted this thing about how there was a group of guys after their son's practice. He was sitting there after his son's practice. It was getting late. I'm paraphrasing now because I can't remember the story fully, but there's a group of men that have just played ice hockey up in Canada, and they're watching their game through live stream, analyzing the game. And the joke is like, okay, this is beer league. You guys don't have to do this. You don't have to.
Yeah.
But in our, it seems like in our community, it's like that is warranted. It's like it's okay to look at game film. It's okay to try to find ways to get better. I mean, I can sit here and tell you I've watched NBHL film of my Assassins team to try to figure out what do we do well, what do we do wrong. You know what I mean? But that's my passion, and that's the coaching side of me. But I find it to be. It seems like everybody wants to get better, and it really is fascinating with this sport. So.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. I think the views on games, like watching things and getting ready, it's every level. I've had, over the years since we started live streaming the Milwaukee events, I had a lot of coaches call me and ask me about, how do I get footage? We used to have Joey Delgado and MVP Productions used to come and do events, and he would advertise out, hey, let me know your team. If you want, we can set up to make sure we record your games and sell you copies of it, whatever. And that got to a point where a lot of people we're worried about the cost of being able to buy that. So we decided to live stream our games for free at Milwaukee event. And we also set up with the company Livestream to keep all of our footage. I was actually looking at the other day and I found footage from 2009.
Wow.
So it's all still there.
That's cool.
So we look at our live stream, our analytics, and the one year we were talking, and our IT guy, Dave Reeser, was telling me, last year, I forget what year it was, but pre-COVID, he's like, you had 415,000 unique logins to your live stream over the course of the year, right? That number just is insane. If he said like 4,000, I'm like, okay, like 415,000. That's people either watching it live during the weekends or going back and logging in to watching his videos. And I heard from lots of coaches that they would use that. And corner, it was up in the corner. It wasn't a great view, but coaches are using that to get better. You translate that now to like what NBHL is doing, how they video all of their games. My team, the Delco Devils, we were in Tier 3 last year, a bunch of my buddies, and then my son and a couple of his friends, right, like 16-year-olds. When we got into the playoffs for Tier 3 Philadelphia, we win, all the way up to the finals, and we're going to the finals against a team that's undefeated in our division. And I remember we were out at a Phillies game, me and my captain and one of our close friends and our wives, and the three of us were on a phone watching videos of this team, the Dinos, that we were going to play, as our wives are getting mad at us because we're not paying attention to them in the Phillies. And we watched these videos, and we spent a week, preparing for the finals to how we were going to beat these guys. These guys were younger, faster, and more skilled than us. They hadn't lost the game all season long, I don't think. And we came in and we beat them in the best of 3, 2-1, 2-1, simply because of the system that we installed from watching their videos. We didn't fare so well at the Milet Cup. Our best player was hurt. It was a monsoon rainstorm playing outdoors or whatever. But we use that video to help us. And I see a lot of people doing that. And it's something that, now this past North Americans, we added to our live stream where we're putting a manned camera at center in the clock box. and we're live streaming like we did, I think, 5 premier men's games, 5 premier women's games, and then all of the semis and finals for all the divisions on Sunday. And we did them on Facebook and Instagram Live. So it's a better view. It's from center, kind of watches the play.
That's cool.
And we're trying to move towards doing that for every game for events moving forward for free, right? Like, because, people, like, they want to watch, they want a good view. The more people that log in at home and all of a sudden their friend walks by and what are you watching? They jump in like, oh, I want to try this. It's another way to try to grow the game.
Absolutely. I wanted to share with you is like in 2021 post COVID, I had found out, and again, so this is 2 years into the research of our rink project, and actually we were getting really close to starting. And at that time, like I had heard of Cool Hockey Events. I had been following you guys specifically. And then I had heard about the circuit where the North Americans comes in, and that's a major championship. And I was literally Saturday morning watching, I think it was the Saints. I can't remember, Jason, who they were playing. But being from Boston, I try to see, okay, the Americans, the Saints. I follow them a little bit more just because they're local guys. And of course the Gods, because I've had conversations with Corey. But long story short, I was sitting there, and about 2 weeks prior, we had a board meeting, and one of our board of directors, he actually lives down in Orlando, Ben Shinkola, and he told me, he goes, Kyle, I'm going to play in the North Americans. I'm going up with Team Orlando. We're going into the novice division. I said, oh, that's great. I'm like, Ben, that's a huge tournament. You're gonna have a lot of fun there. And so I was literally watching one of the games. I don't know if it was live stream in 2021, but
Yeah.
and it was at Feasterville, and literally, Jason, I'm watching the game. He calls me, goes, Kyle, you mind asking Aaron and your family if you can come down and play for Team Orlando? We just lost a guy due to COVID. So I'm like, hold on, let me go. So I went down, and at the time, my wife wasn't in the game, and she wasn't really into the game. And I said, hey, hon, can we go to Philadelphia? And I think it's like a 2 week gap, maybe. I'm like, can we go to
Yeah.
Philly for 2 weeks? And she goes, oh, I don't know. Why? Wise basically. So I said, well, there's a ball hockey tournament. Ben's asking me to play, and she goes, yeah. I mean, she's like, I don't care if you want to. So it's like it was kind of, I don't want to say fate or coincidence. I don't really know what I believe, but it was that experience where I was watching it, and I literally got a call, can you come play? And then it was actually my stepson that really convinced my wife to go. He's like, oh, I want to go to Philly. I want to go see it. And so we made the trip down. 2 weeks later, we were staying. I can't remember the hotel we stayed in, but it was that post-COVID thing where the kids you could rent time to go in the pool. I don't know if you remember any of this, but like you had
Yeah.
to rent time to go in the pool, and then you had the whole pool to yourself. So the kids did it, and that Jason was my literally first time playing ball hockey. And I felt like I can't tell you what a fish out of water is. And like I said, I grew up playing ice hockey, and I had played ball hockey, but not to the level of what these guys. I was blown away by how fast the tile was, the way these guys moved with the ball, with their head up running. And I'm like, these are novice players. You know what I mean? What is the A like? So it was just a great experience. And I don't know if you would ever recall this, but I asked you, I'm like, how big is this rink? Because at that time we were trying to figure out how big we wanted our rink to be.
Yeah.
So anyway, but like I said, that's my first marriage. So how many weeks is the North American? North
The
American
North Americans runs over 3 weekends now.
3 weeks. Can you tell us the divisions just so?
The first weekend is the men's C and D, and then co-ed A, B, and C. The second weekend is men's A, and depending on the size of the pool, it can split into men's A and B, and then women's A, B, and C. And then the third weekend is over 40 A and B, and then men's novice, which splits to novice and rec for playoffs. So I think coming up in 2 weeks we have 19 novice teams, 4 Masters A and 6 Masters B.
And is there a youth one still, or is that?
So this year, actually, we canceled our youth
Okay.
event. There's so many youth events going on starting,
Okay.
April, May, all through the summer that it's kind of a hard market to get into.
For sure.
A few other reasons for us. Location, is not really close to anyone except for maybe one team. So we actually canceled that, and we're bringing back our original Spring Classic tournament where we're going to do like a men's novice and a co-ed B type level.
Nice.
Just more of like kind of a fun time. We're going back outside to the Gloucester Township rinks in New Jersey. So it's more like come hang out, play a little hockey, have a few beers, type of event.
That's cool. That's really cool. How many tournaments per year do you run?
We used to be 10 weekends a year with
It's nine
Beach Bash
now.
being 2. Yeah, it was 9 now. So we have our tournament season kind of starts at the end of the year, right? For us, it starts off with Holiday Bash, which is over 2 weekends. Then you go to our Super Bowl bye week in February, then our North Americans in March and early April, then our Spring Classic in May. We have a small one down the beach in June that's on an outdoor street hockey rink like asphalt, the Summerfest in Wildwood, New Jersey. And then we finish up the season in Nashville this will be our second year there. Nashville, Tennessee, 2-rink, beautiful facility. Summertime, it's covered rink, but no walls. So, you experience the heat and the weather and the wind, but we did it last year. And, we talked about that being outdoors in the summer. And there's a lot of events that are, but it's something that we never did. And, our ultimate goal was, hey, as long as nobody passes out from heat exhaustion, we'll do this again. And, we had just a ton of positive feedback. It was hot, and people dealt with that. But, the location of being in Nashville, like I said, at this beautiful facility, having, the downtown Broadway, to go out to, our Beach Bash was always about Ocean City, Maryland. The rink was a square. It was really, really weird. But nobody ever cared about the deficiencies of the rink being tiny or the floor being old or whatever, because they were at the Beach Bash. So when that facility closed, we did one event at Pottstown that August, and everybody said the same thing: full, great hockey, fun time, but it's just not the summertime experience that we want, right? So when we found the Nashville rinks, we went there, and that's always been our goal for that event, to make that be a vacation. Let's go spend 5 days instead of 3. Let's have a good time. I actually took my sons and came with me to that event, and my one son's really big in the music. So when the event was over, I sent my son and my pseudo stepdaughter, whatever she is, I sent them home, and my other son and I, we stayed for another 2 nights, and we just toured all the museums and the Gibson Guitar Factory down there and everything. We had the same experience that we felt all the customers had. We got to have a little bit of vacation, see something cool. So
That's awesome.
It's always been the goal, right? The events, to make them something that people want to be at because of the event.
I agree. Like I said, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's how Nashville
No,
was.
just we try to make it for, yeah. Like I said, everybody loves to be at the events, for their own skill level, but what are you doing outside of it, right? North Americans, you're there for the hockey, right? That's it. That's what you're coming for. But June and August events, you're coming for the experience as well, being at the beach or being in Nashville. So we kind of try to change them up.
That's awesome. So what are your future goals for hockey, for cool hockey, and even personally for you? Where do you see this going for yourself?
Well, my goals are, and they have been for a long time, are just about growing the game. Right now, we've done that through cool hockey events, expanding the events, expanding the divisions, getting more people playing. But that's at the travel level. Now, my personal goals and the goals that we're hoping that cool hockey can help fulfill are really just expanding the sport on the beginner level, on the starter level. Personally, I recently left a for-profit ball hockey business that was adults. I left that business. And my main goal was leaving that was to go to a nonprofit youth league that was starting in our area. So between myself and Cool Hockey Events, that's where a lot of our resources are going to go to help new leagues that are starting. In our area in Delaware County, Pennsylvania, we started the Delaware County Ball Hockey Association, and that's to help start more rinks that we're not going to personally be involved with, but we want rinks to start in our area. And it was a discussion that we had internally in our board members. If we help another rink start 2 towns over, are we going to lose some of our kids to that rink because they live closer? And the answer is yes, 100%, we're going to. But we're not worrying about our rink as a business. The board members who were involved, when I was asked to get involved, that was my first question. If we're not going to ever try to attempt to make any money from this, I'm in. If you ever tell me that it's going to turn to a for-profit business, I'm out. Right? I lucked out in life. I don't need to go make any money. We've kept our life very, easy and plain, so that we don't have to worry about that kind of thing. So I said, if you guys want to build ball hockey, I'm 100% in. And that's been our goal with our small. We have 3 people on the board, and we now parents, players in our league that travel, 30, 40 minutes to get to ours that are discussing opening up their, and we want to help them, right? No matter how many players it takes away from our league, we want to help them grow, because the more leagues that start to happen in Pennsylvania, the better be for the future of the sport. And I look at the areas like Pittsburgh and Leominster and New Jersey. Those 3 areas, that's where the hotbed of youth ball hockey are. That's where the top players. If you go look at the national teams, I would say 95% of the players are from those 3 areas. You have your outliers, like Chicago has some really good players, and we have a couple players from California in this, but most of the players are coming from them because they have these big, giant youth hockey circuits. South Jersey, my son, is where he played his travel career because we didn't have it over ours. It was an hour drive each way for me, 9 o'clock games where he wasn't getting home till 9 o'clock. What I saw there was 3, 4, 5,000 youth players. I think there's 32 different town leagues in South New Jersey. And I think there's like 7, 8, 9, 10 different travel organizations. And going over there and experiencing that, like, that's what I want here, right? That was my first goal. Now, like, talking about trying to make that happen here, we want to help make that happen everywhere. Through cool hockey events, I've gotten a lot of contacts all over the country. John Tostada down in Florida, where your board member plays, right? Friends out in California running, the Southern California Ball Hockey League, and Beth Marhefka, who played travel for my women's team and on the national teams. Talk to them all the time. Like, what can I do, with my limited time and funding and whatever, what can I do to help? Like, what can I do to help expand that, right? And that's cool hockey. I think, we want to expand, our events. We are considering trying to run it out on the West Coast, just to bring the cool hockey brand out there and how we do things, with the eventual idea of someone out there kind of taking it over and running it and dealing with it. But we want to put that brand out there because, I feel it's kind of recognizable, right? Like,
Of course.
So we want people to see it, like, okay, let's go to this event. Let's go check this out. And if it's a well-run event, then they tell more people where they came from. And if the event gets bigger for the travel people, which is the small part of our community, it's going to make it easier for the community to grow out there.
That's a great point too, Jason, because up here in Massachusetts, where I live in Gloucester, people have asked me, like, how far are you from Leominster? We are an hour and 15 minutes away from Leominster. We're not close to Leominster. We are 30 miles northeast of Boston, right on the ocean, right? Like, we're in our pocket of our own. But ball hockey is so new there. It's so, like, people are like, when you go to the rink in Gloucester, where people are like, what is this? What can you rollerblade on it? Can you know what I mean? Can you do this?
Yeah.
And I told the story the other day to someone. Someone was asking me about how Young Legends had started, and I told them, I said, we were talking about the rink, and they were asking me, like, why don't you guys do roller on here? And I said, well, to be honest with you, if Young Legends was founded with just roller hockey, there wouldn't be Young Legends. There weren't enough kids 20 years ago that were really had rollerblades. We offered a quote unquote inline game. I think 10 out of the 75 kids that we had came and played in that was all that we had. And I've made this point, that I don't get me wrong, I played roller. I've actually played roller down in Philly, outside the Philly area. It's a great game. I enjoy it quite a bit. It's not that I'm against it by any means. It's just, once you start looking at it, and you know this personally, it's like, you have to buy skates. You gotta buy more equipment. Skates alone could be a couple $100 now. And if you can't skate, you're kind of isolating those people. So for us, it's like, my wife is huge into getting women to go to these tournaments. But I always try to remind her, I'm like, there's some really good women and there's some really good players that we have in our program right now that they might not ever be able to travel because they're playing ice hockey, or their kids are playing ice hockey, or you know what I mean? So it's like, we know that we have a lot of catching up to do, but like, having conversations with you, Corey, Tom McMaster out in Fitchburg, who you probably have had conversations with, Chris Hauser and Leominster, trying to find ways to help get more kids in the game is something that I'm really passionate about, because you and me have just talked almost an hour now about how it's changed our lives. And, I feel like if you get more kids in the game, it can help change the course of their life. They fall in love with something, and it takes them down a direction. And one of the things that I've been trying to let people know is tournaments like you guys. I mean, that you have. I mean, if I didn't have my three daughters with me this weekend, literally on the rink, Jason, two iPads and a phone, they're all like, sitting down watching these electronics. But like watching the A division, I was blown away by a couple of different things. One, how fast these guys are, how well they understand the game, some of the passes that they make, the physicality too, Jason. I mean, you would know these teams far better than I would. Like the Saints, they seem to play a very physical game. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
two guys just slamming each other up against the boards without any shoulder pads was just I was so impressed with this level. And I, like I said, I've only watched it on camera, like through your live streams, and that's another thing I wanted to share with you. But being there in person, it's like you see how fast and skilled they are and how dedicated they are. And that's credit to you too, is what I wanted to say, is like when you're changing the direction of the camera. I've watched the post game stuff that you guys do, like someone goes around the camera interviewing these individuals. What I appreciate most about you and Cool Hockey is you're trying to take the game to the next level. And it's really cool because we have all this technology now. Like we just got into it. We have a guy that does drone shots of our rink, things like this. But like you said, I compliment you because you're always trying to make it better and improve it. So,
That all comes from the people that are with me, right? Like, my partners and our staff. Like Cool Hockey Events, I'm just the guy that turns the light switch on and hands out the trophies at the end of the day, right? Like, starting off with with Jamie Cook and JJ DeVinny that we talked about earlier, like they kind of started, the path. But the people that we have now, like my current partner Nick Beard, right? Like I'm just not where I'm at without him, right? Like he just does a huge amount of work on the background. But bringing all these people in, like Declan Moffat, who does all of our video and highlights, and Jacob Willard, who does all of our graphic posts, and Ben Berger out of DC, who kind of helped us come up with all our new roster systems and implement everything like kind of we're doing with the salary cap. Down to our refereeing staff, and clockers. Like if they're not there with the same passion that you and I have for the sport, right? Then they're not doing the best job they can, and the event's not that good, right? So they're the people that really make our events, the best they can be, outside of the team reps that are busting their ass and collecting everybody's money and making sure they're all showing up on time and getting them out of the bars or bailing them out of jail in the morning to make sure they can get to their games, whatever it is. Like that's the people. Those people are the ones that kind of make all this work. Like I said, Nick and I talk about it all the time. Like really, like we make a schedule, we turn on the lights, we make sure the employees are there. Like it's the staff that we have and the players and the reps that are making this grow. We're literally just giving them the opportunity to do that. Like that's what we're providing. And we can't do what we do without these people that are there. I mean, this weekend alone, was the first time that we had three female officials out there at one time. We've been pushing to have more female officials for a while. And we had three this weekend, like Erica Simpson, who, I met Erica Simpson through when she tried out for the national teams for my program. She was a great ice hockey player in her day growing up in New Hampshire, Massachusetts. Got in the ball, made our national team, started the ref, and then she came out, and started reffing ball for us. Colleen Murphy, she's currently on the national team, same thing. She started reffing a little bit of ice, jumped in the ball. And then Michaela Walsh, she was on the U20 USA team. Same thing. She started reffing in Leominster in the kids leagues and whatnot there, started reffing some adult stuff. We brought her down. She was our first time reffing for us this weekend, and the ladies did a great job, awesome. The other referees we had, like Danny Conte and Adrian, coming out of Canada, been reffing for us for years, top end officials for USA Ball Hockey up in Canada. Mike Zambon was there, and Ryan Wilson out of Fitchburg, Pat Hennessy down here. My son, at 17 is a rookie ref. I think he ref 20 games over the weekend.
That's awesome.
They put the effort into the job. And that's been another big part, I think, of the expansion for us over the years was making sure that everybody that was there cared about their job. Down to even our clockers, right? We have people running these video cameras. Like, if they get caught watching the game instead of turning the camera, well, then the live feed stinks, right? So them paying attention to their job,
I've done that before.
Yeah, well, myself, I was filming NBHL games last year. I got text messages from the NBHL director yelling at me. Whoever's running your camera is not turning the camera. I'm like, sorry, that's me. but everybody has to put that passion forward to make something successful. So like I was the one that gets saying thank you and whatever, and I'm like, you got to go see everybody that's working for us, because they're the ones that are doing the work. They're the ones that are making your experience there as a player or a fan the best. I'm sitting at the desk, right? Like I'm not the one making calls. I'm not the one calling the games as an official, because that's the experience that the fans get at home, or they get in the stands, or they get when they're on the floor as a player. They get what those people are providing them. So they're the ones, right? And that's why I think our events have always been successful, because we strive to make sure that we have the best possible people in all those positions.
Absolutely. And it starts with leadership. So I give you a lot of credit for sure on this. So I know I don't want to take up too much of your vacation time, but I did want to ask you, do you have a favorite tournament memory or just a favorite ball hockey memory? It's probably a lot. So
I've been thinking about that a lot since you sent me the ideas and the questions, and it's hard to break it down to one. It really is. Because I mean, you put my son, his first youth goal, his first youth tournament win, right? Like, and I have every one of them. I have every ball. That was a milestone, right? I have them all sitting on a shelf in the basement in a little baseball holder. So there's nothing better than those, right? But to go into our world, the ball hockey world, there's a bunch of experiences like we talked about a little bit. That first time going international, that first time being there, that's probably going to be the biggest, because it started everything. It started the passion behind it. But to go into actual playing stuff, like there's two that stick out for me: one international and one at Milwaukee events. The international was Becky Dobson's goal against Canada to win the game, to put us into the gold medal for the first time in the history of the program. It was a 2-2 game. There was an ice hockey player by the name of Paige Harrington from up in Massachusetts. She was on the Buffalo Buttes that time. We just lost the defender 2 months before Worlds. We really needed a player, and Mike DeFazio introduced me to her, and we got her on the team last minute, and she made a play, read an outlet pass, kept it in, started this whole cycle of this play. Got the ball over I'm drawing a blank on the player's name now. She's going to kill me. Got it over to our other defenseman. Shot on the net. That shot was blocked by Canada into the corner. Tiffany Funt picked it up, and late in the game, right? Figuring maybe a player is going to want to rush. She looked up, took her time. She saw Becky Dobson for a one-timer, and Becky scored. Under the arm of Natalie Giroux, probably the best goaltender in Canada's history. I know her very well. And that was a game winner. The first time we beat Canada. The first time we get to a gold medal game. It's just this thing. And for me, like, I actually had that video clip I had like a video game cabinet in my basement that I built for the kids. And the entrance video to it is that, so every time you turn it on, like the kids turned it on a week ago, and I'm a couple rooms away and I hear the clip come on. So that'll always be one of my top ends. One that's a pure hockey memory that isn't really anything that I was a part of or whatnot, except for running the event, was a save that John Rethage had made in the North American Men's A finals against Denny Schlegel, arguably the best scorer in USA ball hockey history, period, and hands down. It was a ball that was a giveaway in front. Denny was 5 feet off the top of the crease. The ball came right out to him as Rethage was looking over his right shoulder in the corner where the ball was. And, this ball came out to a quick one-timer, glove high, 3 feet of the net wide open, and somehow Rethage got his glove on it. And I remember I was up top at Feasterville watching this with my partner, Nick Beard, at the time. And the noise that came out of the crowd, like, there's say 1,000 people watching the game, probably less, probably closer to 500 people watching the game.
Sure.
But it was packed for that facility. It was like being in an NHL game. Like, it was that loud. Like, we can find the live stream. Is actually, I believe that the clip of that save is the video clip on our website still to this day, because we talk about all the time, like, we need an updated clip. Like, that was 5, 6, 7 years ago. We haven't found a better one. Like, you just can't.
That's fair. Sometimes the past is always, there's some things that are always, it tells your history too.
Yeah. One other big memory for me, like I'm thinking about it now as we're discussing this, is a recent one, was We just put a floor down recently that we bought from Leominster, Chris Hauser. We bought a used floor. We put it down in our youth league, and our youth league getting started there was great. Like that's something that I'll remember when it first started. But when we put this floor down, we just had this first season was just this past fall. The kids that were playing in the league already that were used to this really, really bad asphalt surface. Like I mean, cracks, bumps, whatever. When they came for their first game, and I came to ref it, I wanted to ref that first game on the floor. Just watching these kids, and our league is very beginner, very low level, skill set. Watching these kids talk about how excited they were that they could stick handle on this floor, and how they've never seen it before, never experienced that. That's something that'll be there for a long time, because that's the memory that's just going to say, like, yeah, those last 3 years of building up, for my partner down there, Chuck Clapper, all out of his own pocket, right? Renovating this city rink to get it ready for this. That memory will make all that time and everything we're going to do moving forward. That's like going to stick. Like I have to go home from vacation Saturday, and I'll go down Sunday morning, Easter morning. I got to go down and start laying the floor, to get it done in time for right. Like all that, pain in the butt and arguments, with the family, like you're going to be late to Easter dinner or whatever. It all makes it worth it, because these kids are just they're gonna be back there again. They're gonna have these smiles on their faces, and hopefully, out of the Ridley League that we run, if one day between now and the next 20 years, if one kid can make a national team, right?
I agree.
And make a difference for our country's programs, like that's going to take the thousands of volunteer hours and time and money and everything, and just say, hey, like there you go, like. It might only been 1 second. It might only been one shift, but there's a kid from Ridley, Pennsylvania that just played, for a national team. Like that's why I did it. That's why I spent the last 20 years of my life breaking my ass, was because what these kids or these adults are going to experience that they might not have ever had before.
Absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that story in the fine. There are a lot of kids that are in our program now that remember the old basketball court, but there are kids that are chipmunks that are coming to the program that are going to they play on a premier surface, and they get out there and they'll unless they're playing in the driveway, right, Jason, they'll know the difference between that asphalt basketball court that we started on, and playing on that surface. But I wrote an article before the rink was open it was an organizational email letter that I sent out to parents in our program, and I wrote this about how up here, you already know that New England ice is king. Kids grow up playing the Bruins, ice is king, wanting to be a Bruin. And but I was telling people that I'm like, I'm a big advocate that ice and ball go together. I just believe I played so many hours in my grandmother's driveway shooting either a Mileck ball, golf balls, tennis, whatever we could find, that it helped develop my hand-eye coordination, develop my stick handling ability. But I was talking about how, like, if your child, even if they've never played ice hockey and they grow on the rink and they grow up on the rink and they're playing all the time, there is something to shoot for. That someday they can represent their country. And I kind of have a similar goal, is that someday I hope that we have a youth player that works through our programs. We've done a good job training them, giving them the resources they need so that they can make a level. And actually, what happened recently is a woman by the name of Miriam Callahan, who knows like Karen Doria, Alessandra Glista, people that you've come across. She 20 years ago was playing roller hockey with these women. She joined our program this year and is actually on the Legends team coming up. So we're incredibly proud of her. But the credit is to Miriam too. I mean, she's the one that works at her game too. And we'd like to see more of that as time goes on, Jason. So we've got a long way to go. We've got a long way to go, my friend. But
again, it's the goal.
It's the goal.
That's the goal. And if you have, a bunch of people right, across the country, like have it. I have another business, 2 and 10, right? We make apparel, we make jerseys. And it's something that, as that has expanded, as ball has expanded, like, you see this, right? So we make the jerseys for the league down in Manatee, Florida, right? They have, I don't know, 56, maybe 100, right? Like, right? Utah has a youth league that we met through USA Ball Hockey. We make their uniforms, and it's something that we do internally at 2 and 10. Like, it's a business, right? Like obviously it's a for-profit business, but when we get to these youth leagues, especially these new ones, like, what do we have to do? What price do we have to be to get you these jerseys so that your kids are walking out there not in a cotton t-shirt, with a number pressed in the back, right? Into a sublimated, jersey, short sleeve or whatnot, but something that so that these kids, when they walk out there to play, they feel as close to professionals as they possibly can. And that's the other way that we have been trying to grow the game in our business is helping spread that. When we first started co-hockey events, everybody showed up cotton t-shirts, right? Like my team, green t-shirt with a white logo pressed in the back and numbers, right? They're peeling, they're ripping, they're whatever. We started going to push these custom jerseys. Actually, the Pittsburgh Gods were probably like one of the first big teams that signed on with us that started doing that to look professional, and then everybody wanted to look like the Gods, right? So you see it now, and you see these kids when they come out, right? Even in like the Salt Lake City, Utah division, right? They're a very small division. They play in a very small rink and they're outside, and they're inexpensive, $50, $75, I think, a kid to play. But when these kids show up, like the videos that I get, the guy that runs the league, he's handing out these shirts, and these kids are seeing them for the first time, and they're like,
"Oh yeah,
wait a second, that looks like the Arizona Coyotes jersey." Like, yes, we based it on their
Red
colors,
Rock?
but it's I'm sorry,
Is that Red Rock?
Red Rock, yeah,
Okay, yep.
right.
I had
So
to cover. Okay,
yeah, those kids get to see these jerseys, and I remember the guy telling me, like, the kids are
awesome.
running around and like, look at me, like I'm a professional ball hockey player, right? Like they're getting that, right? And that's why that's another list of a reason on the list of why the events are expanding, right? Like you make these kids feel good about themselves, no matter what level they are. They keep coming back, they keep wanting to play, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of the new youth leagues, like Red Rocks, like Manatee, like the RHL, like that's what they're doing. They have people behind it, like yourself, that are pushing for no other reason whatsoever than the love of the game, and that's why they're going to succeed. The leagues that I've seen start that were just based on making money, they're not around. They don't survive because you're not making a lot of money in this sport. You're just not doing it no matter what you're doing. So, you got to do it because you love it. You got to sacrifice your time, your effort, away from your family or your job because of your passion. And that's the people that I've seen in the last 20 years that have succeeded.
Absolutely, I agree. And speaking of 2 and 10, our Raiders, the women's Raiders, the North Shore Raiders, have a white jersey that 2 and 10 did, and those beautiful sweatshirts. I don't know if you saw me wearing one yesterday when I saw you on Sunday. Beautiful sweatshirts. Like how it's got the lace through it. Like we didn't want to insult anybody, but just a short story here. The North Shore Raiders are technically Young Legends travel women's program, like that's their team. But this past fall, the Raiders appeared in our house league. And so when we got those sweatshirts, we didn't want to upset the other team, the other women's team. So we ended up getting hot shots. Poor Lisa had a miserable time with that order because she's like, wait a minute, there's 2 teams now. So thank you to Lisa Kilroy for putting up with us on that. So, and I look forward to working with that too, Jason, as well, with 2 and 10 and, getting more of our apparel as well. So, thank you for all you do. I just want to share this with you. I know tournaments, being behind the scenes, what people don't realize the amount of time and effort that you put in, and what you don't get a lot out of is the thank yous. And like I said, for me, I didn't even play this past weekend. I just love being around the game, seeing my wife enjoy playing, talking to people, as I'm actually fairly reserved, believe it or not, even though I have to be or I don't want to say self-promoted, but I have to go out and talk to people, because that's how you get it. That's how you learn too. Is like, and what I will say is like this past weekend, I'll take away some memories at like swimming in the pool with my 3 daughters. And it's because of you and your events. So, thank you for doing that.
I appreciate it.
Any other things you want to talk about before we wrap up? Anything?
I just want to, there's some people I didn't mention, like in there that have been a big part of all this. I like to just, get out there, right? Like, I mean, back in the day, like when we first started, right? People like Chris Hauser and what he did in Leominster, as a player and as a promoter and whatever, like, that was the start, right? It's the mecca of ball hockey. I remember taking my son there the first time. Place was closed. We just went in, like, you just got to see it. He didn't get it. He didn't understand, right? He's 10 years old. I'm like, you just got to see it, man. This is the home. But what Chris Hauser has done, Ricky LePerrier from Milek, what he did, buying the company from Ray Leclerc and keeping it open, and what he did with Ashy in the start of, USA Travel. Corey Hurst that we mentioned a bunch, like what he does USA Ball Hockey. Alessandra Galista, what she did for the national teams and women's hockey. I think if there's a face for women's ball hockey, it's got to be her,
It's
right?
her.
And what she's done going through. But there's a lot of other people out there, Anthony San Rocco, and what him and his crew at the NBHL are doing right now for the expansion. Him and I talk about all the time. Like I told him the other day, I said, man, look, there's three of the guys that do it. I said, there's three seats sitting in the Ball Hockey Hall of Fame with your guys' names on it, whenever that turns out to be. And he's very self-depreciative. He's like,
He
no,
really
we
is.
got a lot of work to do. I'm like, you do, and that we all have a lot of work to keep doing. But what the National Ball Hockey League has done, a legitimate national championship, it's the biggest thing. Besides Ray Leclerc inventing the floor and the ball, biggest thing that's ever happened to ball hockey, hands down. I don't think you could change my mind. But there's so many people out there, right? And if this can get out to people and people see it, right? Like I want to talk to the people that are in the little towns, the 20 kids in a gym, on a gym floor, or on a basketball court. Like don't stop, don't stop doing what you're doing, because the more that we get, the better it's going to be, the bigger it's going to be. There's lots of lofty goals, the Olympics and all this kind of stuff,
Sure.
pro leagues in the States. And if that happens, great. Like that's great. But that's for the top 1%, right? My goals and what I want to see people doing are what you're doing, right? Let's get a brand new rink put somewhere where there's never been ball hockey before. And then let's spend hundreds and thousands of hours, trying to get that to become a league. Let's listen to all the people bitch and complain about the problems that they have when they're there, and then let them realize on their car ride home, like, I'm complaining about going out and having a good time, right? Like
Absolutely.
that's where I think our sport has gone tremendously in the last 20 years, but we haven't even scratched the surface, right? Like, we've been working on an interactive map. USA Ball Hockey had the idea, and we're kind of piggybacking off of theirs. But I want there to be a map on Cool Hockey Events website that you can click on every dot, and that dot's going to be a ball hockey rink somewhere in the country. All right, and you click on that dot, and there's going to be information like, here's the league, here's the tournament director, here's the the team rep, like Las Vegas, right? They have two teams in the NBHL. I want to put them on the map, right? Like there's no league to go play in, but I want somebody who moves to Vegas for work or is close by that wants to try it out. I want them to be able to click on that and get all the information they can. How can I come play with you, right? How can I come to your league or your team or whatever? And the more that can be out there, the better. If that runs all through the NBHL and USA Ball Hockey, great. If it runs through Cool Hockey Events, okay. I don't care where that information is. I just care that it's out there to everyone.
Absolutely.
Because when I leave this sport, in another, I don't know, hopefully 20 years, like I want to walk away and know that my grandkids, their kids, are going to have a future with it. I think that's got to be the ultimate goal for everyone.
Absolutely. That's a great statement. That's a wonderful statement. All the people that you mentioned, I'm a big fan of Anthony. I saw him this weekend briefly. I always try to be complimentary. I know I know the amount of time that people put into this, and I'm excited for the future of the game, and people like you, Jason. I appreciate what you've done, and I'm excited to see where we're going to. So,
Me too.
and any way for people to reach out to you directly? What's the best way to contact you?
So on our website, our email info@coolhockeyevents.com is
Okay.
probably the best when it comes to that kind of stuff, right? I'm on Facebook as well too, but that's probably the easiest to start, and
Okay.
if there's anyone out there that's looking for help, starting a league or questions or advice, like, I always have my phone on me. I always answer my emails, like, and if I can't figure out the answer, or if I'm not local, like I'll help you find someone that is, because again, 20 years from now, I want men's teams coming to play in the A from Gloucester. I want, from Salt Lake City, from Manatee, Florida, from Las Vegas. Like, I want there to be these new things, like you're seeing it, right? There's kids coming out of Chicago now that are starting to play up on like the sea level. There's kids out of Long Island that played on graphics with Anthony San Rocco this weekend that, are playing at higher levels. Like, I want to see more areas. I want there to be a team that's going to register one day for Cool Hockey Events. And I want to open up that email and go, where is this team from? Like, what is this? I had no idea. Like, I want to be surprised. And I think that's like what we get out of all this building.
Well, we sometimes we played a tournament in Leominster after COVID with a youth team, and there was Gloucester Township, And then we were from Gloucester, Mass. So it was like, wait a minute,
Yeah,
Gloucester,
yeah.
New Jersey, Gloucester. So it was funny that and then we had to play each other in the first round, and our kids were just deer in headlights. They had no idea where we were going. But I always tell them, I always tell our kids, some of our players, even our women, I've told this multiple times. I'm like, you guys are pioneers. You are paving the way for youth girls that are because we try to Facebook Live our games so people can see it back home and see what it's like. And I think that's part of why we've seen such a tremendous growth in our women's program. Is honestly, Jason, it's my wife who communicates with a lot of people. She's not afraid to ask people to play, but it's also them as a group too. They're constantly out there saying, "Hey, come try ball hockey, come try this." And then when you go to a tournament like Nashville and you create a reel, and it's not me, one of our staff did. I think it was actually my wife who did this, where there's pictures of not just the game, but them walking on Broadway together, and it's that whole camaraderie piece that people like. I want to be a part of that too, and that's why I never want to. We never want to turn people away, and I feel like, and again, not to get crazy here, but on my deathbed, when I look back on my life, I don't want to think about all that money or I spent, or I want to think about the relationships I created and the good times that I had with people.
Yeah.
That I feel that'll be more important to me than, did I make $1 million or did I, did it, you know what I mean? That to me is far more important. And like I said, I've said this 3 times already, but like going to down there this weekend, staying in the hotel with my daughters, you know, no one can take that from me. I didn't even play in the damn tournament. You know what I mean? So, but like I said,
Well, there's memories of what we're creating, like,
yeah,
like you said, when we're all old and decrepit and we can't do it anymore and we're coming to the end of life, like, when I look back on, did I have a good life, right?
yeah,
Not a big life, not an expensive life, a good life, right? And I think, that's what I have in ball hockey, right? Like, that's what I'm going to realize when I'm going, like, there was a lot of questions for me, leaving, a very lucrative union, job building. My family built the Philly Stadium, the Eagle Stadium, the Flyer Stadium. Like, I was on all those jobs, right? And there was plenty of opportunity for our family to expand and get even bigger in the union world. And to leave that for, very, very low money, has never, maybe the first 2 years, was like, a lot of people questioned why I did that, why I would leave that position and for what I was doing. But in the last 15, I've never questioned it once, never once, and I never will. It doesn't matter. I don't need the big fancy life. I have a better life than anybody I know with a big fancy life, just because of the people I've met in this and the relationships that have come from it. So
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to say just thank you again. It's great to meet in person and also be able to talk to you online, because I was like, I felt bad. I wanted to do it in person. I'm like, I broken microphone. Um, North Americans is a great event. I know we're already talking about coming down into the December event, getting our women's B team down there. But again, Jason, thank you so much. Reach out to him, 2 and 10. Like I said, I own some of the apparel, great stuff. And again, thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure. So, till next time, everybody, I hope you have a great time, and check out Jason's Cool Hockey Events website. And till next time.